Today, I have the profound honor of introducing two extraordinary women who embody the spirit of true warriors. Coldwell Banker Realty President of Atlanta and the Carolinas, Laura Rittenberg, and Chief of Staff to Kamini Lane, and mom to triplets, Aimee Lerner, are amazing. These women are a force both personally and professionally, and they're not just breast cancer survivors, they are beacons of hope, strength, and resilience. Now, in full transparency, I rarely read off a script on the Teams meetings, but as I was preparing opening remarks, each time I read this, I got choked up because these women truly inspire me and they move me. Laura and Aimee, in your battles against breast cancer, you have shown us what it means to fight with grace and indomitable will. Your journeys, marked by courage and unwavering determination, are nothing short of inspirational. You have faced challenges that many of us can only imagine, yet you stand here today not just as survivors, but as triumphant victors in your personal wars. I am so deeply grateful for your presence here today. You are not just survivors, you are an inspiration to us all. Thank you so much for sharing your stories today. Please join me in welcoming these two tremendous leaders to today's What Moves Her event.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good afternoon, everyone. Just making sure my microphone is on. As Lindsay mentioned, my name is Aimee Lerner. I am the Chief of Staff to Kamini Lane, the CEO of Coldwell Banker Realty. And I am both humbled and honored to have been asked by Lindsay to join today's fireside chat with my friend and peer, Laura Rittenberg. In 2021, I was diagnosed with DCIS, stage 0 breast cancer. Thankfully, I was able to catch it early, and I am here today to help other women and men through the journey of breast cancer. I know how incredibly lucky I am, and there isn't a day that goes by that I don't take that for granted. However, not all women are as fortunate as mine and Laura's. And our goal for you today is to help educate, empower, and share our experiences with you in hopes that we can help more women and men receive better outcomes. So, with that, I'd like to introduce Laura Rittenberg officially. Laura, as Lindsay said, is the president for Atlanta and the Carolinas here at Coldwell Banker Realty. She has an unbelievable outlook and lease on life. Her story is not only interesting, but enlightening, and I could probably guarantee that almost everyone will learn something. So, Laura, welcome. There's so much to say, but let's start with your diagnosis. How did this come about, and tell me one thing that you discovered on your journey?
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you, Aimee. I am so happy that we do have this opportunity to share our stories that are so very different. You know that statistics indicate that 1 in 8 women will develop breast cancer and 1 in 39 will die from that disease. And I hope you'll just take a minute and think about the number of women in your immediate and extended families, the women you work with and in your social circle. If we can reduce the number of fatalities by just a small amount through early detection, it makes a significant difference. And that's really what Aimee and I hope to do today. So I would share with you that I have no known history of breast cancer in my family, but I've always been very diligent about scheduling a mammogram every year. And I did that last year, just about this time, December 29th. And I share the date because it actually is pretty startling because things progressed so quickly for me. So on December 29th, I wasn't surprised when I got a call back because I've always had fibrous tissue, and they said, we want to check again. And so I had a second mammogram, and on January 19th, in the following week, I had a biopsy and sonogram, and it detected that there was one mass that it was determined was malignant, and that I was going to need to have a procedure, and I would have to determine what that was. And I was diagnosed with estrogen positive, progesterone positive, and HER2 negative cancer with a proliferation rate of 37%. So from December 29th, when I had my first mammogram with one mass, by February 16th, I had 3 masses. And so on April 13th, I decided to go ahead and have a bilateral mastectomy because it was growing so quickly and because I wanted to really just be done with treatment. And that was the best way to ensure that it wouldn't come back again.
Wow. Unbelievable. And any surprises along that journey?
Well, actually, there were a lot of surprises that I had. I was surprised by my caregivers that no one suggested that I have genetic testing other than after I went through all the treatment, then my primary care physician suggested it. But I was really surprised by that. I was surprised by so many people that came forward and told me that they had very quietly and silently undergone a similar diagnosis and had treatment without telling anybody, not taking any time off work and really not wanting anyone to know about it. I think that they were afraid maybe that their employer or their managers would think they wouldn't be able to perform their responsibilities. I was also surprised by the number of strangers that, when they learned what I was going through, provided a lot of support, shared their journey with me, really gave me hope that so many people do survive this illness. And one of the things that I was really surprised by is how many women told me that they thought I was very brave for sharing my story. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that. But Aimee, I'd like you to maybe share a little bit about your story because it's so different than mine.
It is. And thank you, Laura. I mean, just knowing how quickly your cancer was spreading is really insane, and how smart it was that you went in and got that checked, right? So, you're right. My story is very different. It started when I was 2 years old. I was diagnosed with rhabdomyosarcoma, which is, it was cancer, a tumor that was in my chest and liver. And I received a lot of radiation and chemotherapy due to that, which brought me to today. So I'm alive because of that. But the negative were there were some consequences. And they believe that all that radiation is what caused the breast cancer. So I've been followed very closely my whole life. And when the doctor told me around, I was about 39 years old, that I really need to start going in for mammograms, I sort of poo pooed it. It was right before the pandemic, and I didn't really think I needed to. I was so young. I'm not very large chested to begin with. And so I didn't really think much of it. And then the pandemic hit, and I decided, why risk going in for a mammogram at the time, because no one really knew what was going on. Why not just wait until everything's back normal, quote unquote normal again, and then go in and get tested. And so that's what I did. And when I went in, it was just a spiral effect. I had one mammogram and they sent me for more testing. And what they found was a lump, a mass in my left breast. And so, just due to all of the radiation and scar tissue and everything that was in that area, the fact that they couldn't get a great biopsy of it or remove it without doing damage, I too decided to go for a bilateral mastectomy. So in the summer of 2021, I went in and had that surgery. Thankfully, all of the test results came back that it was DCIS, which means that the cancer was stuck in those breast tissue cells, and it had not spread. So I was really, really fortunate that I caught it very early and was able, with surgery, to not need any more chemotherapy or radiation after that, um, which is a blessing, an absolute blessing. But as I've started to share my story, I have found more and more that mastectomy is such a almost dirty word in the
Mhm.
world of breast cancer. And, it's sort of ironic that both you and I opted for that, as there are many, many women who don't, right? And there's nothing wrong with whatever choice you make, of course. But, I'd love to kind of just hear from you, in case there are people that are in that situation one day, sort of what made you make that decision to do sort of more of that drastic surgery versus a lumpectomy, radiation, chemotherapy, whatever the other course would have been for you.
Well, I think very much like you. When you think about, or when I was thinking about it, I knew that I wanted as permanent a solution as I could have. Not
Yeah,
not that there's ever really any permanent solution, right? But I knew, I've always been tough, when and the person that, whatever I have to deal with, I'm going to deal with it that day, and I'm not going to slow down. I'm not going to think about it. But I had some time when leading up to my first appointment with my oncologist, when I thought I'm going to get really horrible news and there's not going to be any hope and there's nothing that I can do about it. And it was a panic attack, which was strange for me because I've never had one in my life. I hope to never have one again. But I had this thought that, of total despair. And I knew when I was given choices that I never wanted to have that feeling again. And the best way I could prevent that was to remove that breast tissue. But I have spoken to so many people, like I said earlier, who said, you're brave to tell that story. And it didn't occur to me, Aimee, that people would ever think differently of me because I'd had a mastectomy. But I'm finding that there are women who feel ashamed, or who are embarrassed to talk about that, as they define themselves by their physical appearance and by their breasts. And I hope that that's something that we can share, is that I don't feel any differently about who I am because I had this mastectomy. I'm so glad I made that decision.
absolutely. I think of it as a badge of honor, right? No
Mhm.
matter what you've gone through in life, whether it's breast cancer, a different type of cancer, fertility issues, whatever it is that you are overcoming, physical or mental, you should think about that as a badge of honor and wear that proudly versus hiding behind it. And I found, even through our talks previous to this conversation, being able to connect with other people that have gone through things and have that support, even months or years after what you've been through, is such a great feeling as well. So I just so appreciate our chats and everything that we've done leading up to this moment. But
And
so
I agree, and I
yeah,
just have to tell you that I've been approached by so many survivors who said, "I've been a survivor for 29 years," or "I've been a survivor for 10 years," or "I'm a
yeah,
one-year survivor." And in every case, it gives you hope, and it gives you some confidence that we're going to go forward and have a normal life. And I'm so appreciative of people who share, and I hope that people who are survivors will share their story as others have shared with us.
absolutely. So talk to me a little bit about accountability. This is something that you and I talked about that I find really amazing. Is, everyone says go and get tested, right? Test, 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 test. But you do something kind of fun with the women in your life, and I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I was so surprised because, I've been really open about this journey since the very beginning. First of all, I have to say that I work with an incredible lady, Caroline Wilson, who was just a few months ahead of me in her diagnosis. And so we even had some of the same caregivers. And so she was able to be sort of a mentor to me in that process, which was so helpful to me. And so, having had that experience, I have been very open and shared, what I have been experiencing. And so many women have said, "Oh my gosh, I am overdue for a mammogram. It's been a year. In some cases, it's been 2 or 3 years. I have a friend who is nearly 60 and has never had a mammogram." And so one of the things that I have done is I have said, okay, I am going to be relentless with you until you go and have a mammogram or schedule your mammogram. And then you have to call me back and tell me when you've scheduled it, because I'm not going to leave you alone until you do. And I know that I have at least 20 individuals that have scheduled a mammogram because I stalked them until they made it happen. And I think that that's something that I wish everyone would do, is say to those in their life, I love you, get screened.
Absolutely. And just making sure that you follow up with them, right? And holding them
Yes.
accountable, I think, is such an important piece of that, because it's so easy, like I did, to just keep putting it off. But when you have a friend in your ear that says, Aimee, did you schedule that yet? Did you go? It makes you really, actually do it and get it over with. So I think that's awesome.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, the other thing, in addition to encouraging the people that we love and that we care about to get screened, to have a mammogram, I think it's so important to encourage self-exam and to share what to look for. I don't know. It sounds to me that you didn't have any knowledge, that you didn't detect anything in self-screening.
Correct. Correct. I did not. But I know you did, and I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit, and maybe even talk about what surprised you and how you maybe would have known what to look for. I think that's really
Yeah,
interesting too.
yeah, I was able to identify after I was told where it was. I didn't, in self-screening, I didn't notice any difference in the appearance of my breast. I didn't feel anything. I was looking for a lump or a bump or a nodule, but that some sort of a mass. And once I was told where the cancer was, I could feel it, but it was just a difference in the firmness of the tissue. Sort of like if you touch the back of your hand, it's much firmer than if you were to touch your forearm. And so I could feel that once I was told that's what to or where to look. And the other thing is, I was told that the cancer had infiltrated my left nipple. And when I looked at it, then I could see that there was starting to be a change. It was starting to become a little bit inverted. Had I known to look for that, I probably would have detected it some weeks or months earlier. And as quickly as it was growing, just a few weeks, 6 weeks made a huge difference. My mass was tripled in 6 weeks. So imagine if I would have waited, or if I could have even have detected it earlier. You know,
Right.
it would have made the process easier. The other thing that I want to be sure and mention is that my father, and I'm going to say he is my adoptive father, because this is not something that was genetic, was diagnosed with breast cancer at age 86, and he had a mastectomy. My son-in-law's father, who was from a different region in the country, was also diagnosed with breast cancer and had a mastectomy. So this is not something that women only need to be concerned with.
Correct.
Everybody really needs to be aware of the fact that they can be impacted by this disease.
Absolutely. That's so important. And for men, just going and getting a physical every year is probably all you need. And women, as we talked about, going in for that mammogram.
And everybody should really watch for a visible change. How we diagnosed my father's was his left nipple became completely inverted. And so he pointed out to the doctor and said, what is this? And that's how it was detected. So, just mentioning that you see something different. If you see something, say something. It applies here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful. Laura, can you talk? Oh, go ahead.
Now,
Sorry.
I was just going to say, I am so curious. Your journey was so much different than mine, because you are a mother of triplets. For me, it seemed really simple. I have one adult daughter. My husband was my rock. Terry was amazing. And there were not lots of little people depending upon me, but you had triplets. What was that like? And
Yeah.
how did this impact all the caregivers in your world?
Yeah, that's a great question. At the time, my kids were 6 years old. So, you definitely aren't one that's going to come home and tell your 3 6-year-olds mom's got breast cancer, right? Because they don't know what that means, and you don't want them to be scared. But at the same time, I come from a family of transparency, and so I didn't want them to see me going through something and not understanding why it was happening either. And so, I took the approach with my husband to let them know that mom was sick and that I had some bad cells and I needed some surgery to remove them. And they pretty much rolled with it. I kept the house, tried to keep their schedule and the house as normal as possible. And I really had to take a step back and be okay with the fact of saying yes to help. I'm a very type A driven person who does not like to take help. I like to do things on my own. And so the thought of allowing my mom and my mother-in-law and my husband to come and care for me and take care of the drains after my surgery or bring me food into my recliner, was a lot. I wanted to be able to jump up and do it myself, but I was told you have to take it easy. And as a mom of three 6-year-olds, that was really tough to do. I wanted to be able to tuck them in bed at night. I wanted to be able to see them at school. But you've got to really put life into perspective and realize that what I realized is for me, it was a period of time that I needed to take to get myself better and healthy. And by allowing myself to say yes to the people that love me most in my life, I was able to do that and to heal properly so that there were no complications, so that I could get back to life with my kids, that I could take them to camp or go to an after school activity with them. And so I am really, really fortunate that I had that in my life. Now, not everybody, unfortunately, is as fortunate as that. And so I would just say where people come in to help in your life, if they do, don't be a martyr. Take them up on that. Really, just indulge in self healing because it's one of the most important things that I did. And you know what? My kids came in every day after school to say hello to me and to sit and we watched a TV show together or they read to me. And, it works. It was not perfect. It was not what I obviously would have wanted or scheduled, but you make lemonade. What is the saying? You make lemonades out of lemons. I always say those things wrong, but um, you know, it is what it is, and you've got to really be able to take things one step at a time.
I think
But
that's
yes,
amazing that you were able to do that, Aimee. And I think that also brings up another great point is that everybody's process and journey is going to be a little bit different, depending upon their family circumstances and their own health and the place where they are mentally. And I know for some people they need to take some time off, and I think that we've for a long time people felt like I've just got to suck it up and go to work. And I think that during COVID maybe we learned it's okay not to come in or go to the office or go to work when you're not feeling well, and we can leverage teams and that kind of thing. But I think it's okay too to be able to sort of figure out what it is that you need and take time for yourself, right? And I think you
absolutely.
were able to do some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are resources that you can take, at most companies, especially anywhere does such a wonderful job of helping its people in times of need. And so being able to take that piece and take that time that you need, whether it's, a week, a couple days, a couple months, to be able to heal and really take care of yourself, it's a big journey. And what we went through, we shouldn't take lightly, right, Laura? I mean, it's a major surgery. And so being able to get back up on your feet. And for those that, we were lucky in that we didn't need chemotherapy or radiation after our battles, but there are most people that do, right? And so to be able to continue to take care of yourself is really so important.
I couldn't agree more. And Aimee, one of the things that I worry about sometimes, especially with some of our sales associates, but with all of our employees is that they feel like they really can't take time off. For me mentally, I went back to work very quickly. I really stopped working for like less than 3 days, but I was able to rearrange my schedule so that I could work from home. I minimized my in-person appointments over the next few weeks and really reduced my travel schedule. And that's something that really worked for me. I needed something to do. So for me, that works great. But I worry about our employees and about our sales associates who are afraid to share their diagnosis and their journey with people because they're afraid that maybe their clients won't continue to work with them. And I really want to encourage everybody just to put together a plan so that they can continue to do the things that are important to them. I really feel like that with our sales associates. If they tell their clients that they've got a support group to help them, I'm confident that their clients won't elect to use another agent. I always feel badly when I feel like that we have people who are suffering silently or are on this journey alone because they think that they really shouldn't tell anybody what it is that they're experiencing. I found that the support really it made it so much easier for me just to be able to talk about it sometimes.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So in the beginning, you mentioned a really interesting stat about 1 in 8 women, and an increasingly number of men will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their life, which is really amazing, right? Like, how many times are you out to dinner with 8 or more women, right, sitting at a table? And when you think about that to yourself, one in that group very well could be diagnosed during their lifetime with breast cancer. I mean, it's really outrageous how many women are affected by this, and obviously men too. So with that, what kind of advice would you give somebody that's newly diagnosed? So we're taking a little bit of a step back, but you know, what would you say to somebody when they first get diagnosed about um, any of your tips and tricks?
Well, one of the things that none of my caregivers suggested was that I do genetic testing. And I am glad that I did. I have an adult daughter. And so I did the BRCA testing. And even though I had already gone through treatment, I felt like it was super important to do that because I have a daughter to see if there was something genetically that would put her at greater risk. And as it turns out, I tested positive for the BRCA1 gene. My daughter Rebecca, since that time, which I tested in November or in October, I guess, she has also tested positive for the BRCA gene. So she is in a position to take some preventative measures to make sure that she doesn't contract cancer. I also am going to have one more preventative procedure now that I know that I have it, because with that BRCA gene, you have a 59 to 72% increased chance of breast cancer and a 39 to 44% increased chance of ovarian cancer. So I think that's one
Wow.
thing that I encourage everybody to do is make sure that your family members have an opportunity to take some steps to prevent an illness of their own. The other
Yeah.
thing is move quickly. That's and another type A. We're sister type A personalities for sure. So, the doctor would say, we're going to call you with an appointment. And if that day I didn't get a call back, I was calling the phone the next day. I just didn't wait for them to get back with me. I was an advocate for my own health. And I wanted to make sure that I I got treatment as quickly as possible, and that was before I even knew how high the proliferation rate was. So I think I was very fortunate because I just think, if things had taken a course and it had taken additional 6 weeks, what might have happened then? Maybe it would have spread to my lymph nodes. Maybe it would have been much more serious.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about
I
you,
mean,
Amy? What kind of advice would you give?
oh, goodness. Well, first of all, the advocating piece really resonates with me because my entire life I've been advocating for myself through the healthcare system. And if there's one thing that I've learned is that doctors and nurses don't always know everything. Trust your instincts, trust your gut, trust what you're feeling, and advocate for yourself. If you don't feel like you're getting the answer that you want, or that they're listening to you, which is, a big part of healthcare, move on. Find another doctor that will, and that you and them will be on that same wavelength. I think that is so, so important to advocate. The other thing I would say is when you first find out, when you're first diagnosed, stay off Google. Like, don't do it. Don't go down the rabbit hole at 3 a.m. Wait and really get the facts from your doctor first. Because you really, with the internet today and, different social channels, you can really go down a rabbit hole. And I would say stay away from that stuff. Once you've got a handle on your diagnosis and the treatment moving forward, if you want to dabble in social media, go for it. I was a part of a group that was very specific on Facebook for women that had double mastectomies with no treatment after. And I felt that room, chat room per se on Facebook was a really good outlet for me to get questions answered. Everybody was really open, but nobody was negative. And so I would say that's the other thing to really be aware of, is to really stay positive and keep yourself above that waterline. Don't get down into the trenches of, depression and sadness and woe is me. As much as you want to do that, sometimes you got to stay positive through this, because that's what gets you through to the finish line and feeling great about yourself. And it is so, so difficult to do. And so I would just say, if you can, and if you've got people around you to help you be in that right mindset, take advantage of it every single time.
I think that's really great, Aimee. And that brings up another point that I would want to share is that I had a really great care team, except I my first appointment with the surgeon to do reconstruction after the mastectomy was not very encouraging. And in fact, he didn't know that I was in real estate, but he used the example as I went to see him, and I said, "Okay, let's do the best we can with this reconstruction." And he said, "Well, listen, I just want you to think about this as a remodel. If you were a house, we wouldn't be remodeling; we'd just be scraping it and raising, and so you'll be lucky basically with whatever you get." And my husband and I walked out of that doctor and found somebody else. And I encourage you not to just accept, like you said, Aimee, not just to accept what someone tells you. If it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't sound right, get a second opinion. If you need a third opinion, get a third opinion. Do it quickly. But
Yes.
don't let someone tell you that this is the only option that you have if you don't feel good about this.
Yeah, agreed. And reach out to people that have gone through similar situations, right? So I think I spoke to a couple of women who had the same type of breast cancer that I did. And I asked them questions and they were open. And so if you can find that outlet, talk to your doctor, ask them to, if there are other women that they've taken care of that would be open to speaking with you about whatever questions you may have. Because I'll tell you, there were things that I spoke about with some of these women that I never would have thought about myself, from everything from things I ordered off Amazon for after my surgery to questions that I asked my surgeon. And so not only being able to speak to the doctors, but also if you have that opportunity to network and speak with other women. And now that we're doing this, Laura, I think anybody out there that knows or can get in touch with either one of us, we would be happy to speak with in the future about what we've been through as well. But being a mentor to others, I think is so important. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
I was actually really surprised at how many people that I work with every single day who have been down this path that I didn't know about. But when they learned about my diagnosis, they stepped up and they shared with me what they experienced and what I might expect. And I am so grateful to them. And I was so surprised that there were so many people so close to me that have already had this experience that I just didn't know about. And so I think it's so important that if you are a survivor that you share, if you are diagnosed, with cancer, that you not suffer silently by yourself. I think that your outcome will be so much more positive if you lean on people that want to be there for you. And
Absolutely.
and I think that it's, again, so incredibly important that we hold the people in our lives accountable uh, for early detection. Be sure you're doing what you can, and to tell our family and friends. Now, my new favorite tagline or byline now is, "I love you. Get screened."
That's awesome. I love that. So we're starting to run up on time. Before we hit the Q&A, so if anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in chat. We'll definitely get to all those questions today. But any last piece of advice for those that are listening based on everything you've gone through, whether it was pre, during, or post your breast cancer journey?
Wow, I've already shared so much of what I am thinking. I guess, um, if there was anything else that I would have to share, it would be not to psych yourself out. I there have been, a number of times before, during, and even after, since of my treatment, where I have a headache and I think, oh no, now I've got brain cancer, or something's wrong. So what I found is that by not by saying, well, okay, I'm just going to let it pass, but by either talking to my doctor or talking to someone who's experienced what I'm experiencing, is able to I'm able to sort of put that to rest, so that I'm not focused on what else might be going wrong. And I think that's very important, because how often do you hear, well, somebody had a symptom and they just ignored it, or they just let it, and if there's
Yep.
nothing there, it almost manifests itself because you're worrying about it all the time. So put it out there. Don't don't worry alone. Don't worry silently. How about you,
Yeah.
Amy? Any
Yeah.
last thoughts?
The last thing I would say is care for the caretakers. So, if you have a friend or a relative that is caring for somebody that is going through anything, right? It doesn't have to be breast cancer, it could be anything. Help take care of them too, right? I can't tell you, I had a lot of people that reached out that said, hey, let me just take your kids for a couple hours so that your husband can take a nap, right? Or he can go to the gym, or let me come and help you with lunch so your mom doesn't have to come every single morning. And so caring for the caretakers, I think, as well, is so important. And I think all of us, if we haven't been touched with somebody in our lives that are going through some type of struggle, which I hope nobody ever has to, but you probably know somebody that is a caretaker for someone. And so no matter what they're doing, remember them and take care of them too. I would say that's a something that I try to do now that I've been through that experience. And I think it's really important.
I agree. I
So
agree.
thank you, Laura. With that, I think Leslie's on. Leslie, I'm not sure if there's any questions for Laura, myself, but we'd love to open it up to Q&A.
Well, absolutely. First, thank you very much. So many words of encouragement, and what a loving community that is watching this. There have been words of for praise, your courage, your strength, your insight, your inspiration, your advocacy, and people are starting to set up appointments right now. They said to be screened. So thank you
Awesome.
very much. But one question is that someone has a recent family member diagnosed, and they were wondering, what support the family and friends did to make a difference in your outlook or recovery.
Laura, you want to take that to start?
Well, one of the very first people who stepped up and said something was actually our friend Leslie, who's doing the moderation, and she came over to see me, and she brought a card and a little angel that I put in my purse and carried with me when I went to the doctor to get the details of the diagnosis. And I just have to say, those kinds of gestures, I'm here, I'm thinking about you, if you need anything, meant so much to me. Uh, Also, I had numerous people who sent food, which was great because, if you know me, my husband has asked me to please never cook for him again, and so that was a great relief for him to be able to take a step back. But people not worrying about what to say, just saying "I'm here for you," really meant a lot to me. How about you, Amy?
Yeah, I agree. The check-ins, you don't have to call me back, you don't have to text me, but thinking about you, I would say, if you're looking to actually send something, some of the things that I actually really, really appreciated, I know this sounds so crazy, but somebody sent me a lady that came over and washed and dried my hair for me. And I know that sounds bananas, but after you have surgery, you cannot move your arms. You can't lift them, you can't move them. And, I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, like I don't expect somebody to come really take care of me. I've got 3 kids they have to take care of. And so even just sending somebody over to wash my hair and dry it was just like such a blessing, and the food. I think being able, whether, we had people that just rang my doorbell and dropped off a dinner for us. He didn't even come in the door, right? Handed it to us and said, "We love you. Tell Aimee, we hope she feels better." And that is so powerful because it's like the community that comes together and really gets you through those hard times, right? Especially with the kids and trying to get everybody different places. So whether it's offering for carpool to help somebody's kids get to where they need to be, as Laura said, sending a meal, um, or just checking in with a text is really, I think, the best thing that you can do for somebody.
I agree. And something else is that if you've got insurance, you may be surprised how many resources that there are available through your insurance. I got calls from the insurance company as well as from the hospital system where I was receiving care to see, do you have money for food? Do you need transportation? Do you need a support group? They had a nurse that would call me regularly, and so I would encourage anyone who had a recent diagnosis or who knows someone with a recent diagnosis to tap into those resources. Say yes. Don't say, oh, no, I've got this, but say yes.
Absolutely.
So,
Leslie,
and
do we have
here we'll
time
go.
for any more?
We have one more question. How did the Coldwell Banker Anywhere Network support you during your diagnosis and treatment? And then how can we, as as the employees, support any colleagues going through this?
That's a great question. I'll take that first, just because I was lucky enough to have 2 colleagues. One of them is our voice today, who said, "I'll cover you." And she did. Leslie was amazing while I was out. She helped cover, I was the field marketing director at the time, and she helped cover my region. And I also had an absolutely amazing team that I worked with in the Midwest that band together and really stuck together and got the job done. And I knew that the people here had my back and were able to, keep all the pieces together, and the train moving forward without me. And listen, you got to set your ego aside and realize that even if you're not here, everything works great, right? We put people in place for a reason, really good people. And guess what? Everything was still waiting for me when I got back. And I've been able to not only dig in, but dig in further. So I would say if you have a colleague that's going through something like this, or going through anything that they need to take time off for, is to really just let them know you're there and not to worry. Anything you want to
Absolutely.
add, Laura?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add to that is, I have an amazing leadership team, the people that I work with locally, and they all really stepped up and made sure that things continued to run the way that they knew I wanted them to be to run. And I'm eternally grateful and want to thank everybody for that. But at every level of the organization, everyone made it very clear that they would support whatever I needed to do. If I needed time off or whatever, if I needed to work from home for a little while, they made it abundantly clear that it was okay and that I should take the time and do what I needed to do. So I think our company has been amazing. Everyone has
Absolutely.
expressed support, and we really couldn't ask to be in an organization where they cared for their employees any better than ours.
Absolutely. Well, that is a perfect way to end. Thank you so much, Laura, for being my partner in crime today. You're amazing. This has been fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Get screened.
Thank you, Aimee.